In this video, we're going to set up that timer not as a text, but as a wheel. But we want all the attributes still to be transferred, so we want the timer to count down starting from 30, and we want it to go from green to red. Our first step is just to go ahead and get rid of this timer text, since we don't want to see it at all. So go ahead and delete that text. Now, in place of that, we're going to add a new UI to the canvas, and it's going to be a slider. Let's go ahead and anchor this and position it in the bottom right-hand corner. First things first, we don't want this to be interactable. We want transition to be set to none, and we're going to go ahead, open up the slider, and delete this handle. So let's go into scene view and zoom into the slider so that we can see exactly what it does. You can see that as the value on the slider changes, the slider itself fills up. So we have a background, which is this gray color, the fill area, which is the area that gets filled, and the fill itself. We're going to start out by changing the background and the fill sprites. We don't want them to be rounded rectangles. We want them to be like a circle, so we're going to go up to source image, and we're going to change that from background to knob. We're going to do that for the background, and we're going to do the same thing for the fill. As of now, you can't really see that shape change, so we're going to go up to the slider and adjust the width and the height. So let's go ahead and make this 150 by 150. Now you can see they're more knob-like. Go back into the background and reset that rect transform. Go ahead and change it to 150 by 150. We're going to adjust the color of the background. So as the fill changes from green to red, so we're not going to need to worry about the fill color, we want the background to remain the same dark, unobtrusive color. So let's go ahead and do a dark gray. Leave the background as a simple image type. Now if you see the slider, it still changes in the horizontal direction. We want it to change in a radial direction, and we're going to adjust that with the fill. Let's go ahead and reset the fill area first. This is going to be 150 by 150, just like our background. Now going into the fill, we're going to change the image type from simple to filled. Now our fill method can be horizontal, vertical, and 3 different radials. We want this to be a radial 360. So now you can see that as you fill it, it starts from the bottom and goes clockwise around till it's full. We want to change that, and we want it to actually start at that full value and then decrease, but I want this to occur at the top. So go ahead and change fill origin to top. Now since we're going to start with it full and have it decrease, I want it to decrease clockwise. So since we're talking about the fill, we're going to uncheck the clockwise so it's filling counterclockwise, which means it will decrease clockwise. Set left to 0 and right to 0 so that it's perfectly centered. And like I said before, we're not going to worry about the color because we're going to use that color lerp function to change that. Let's go into our game view and adjust the positioning of the slider. Go up to slider, and we want to give it a little buffer like we did with score and question. So let's go ahead and move it -50, so 50 to the left, and we'll also move this, let's do 25 in the Y. Now so far our max value is at 1, and it decreases all the way to 0. However, we want to start at 30 and decrease down to 0. So our minimum value is still 0, but let's change the maximum value to 30. So we have our slider all set up. We just need to apply the code to the slider. So let's go into our game manager where we did the original timer countdown. We got rid of our text, and in place of that, we did a slider. So change this public text to be a public slider. And instead of naming it the same timer count, I'm going ahead and change this to timer slider. So we have timer slider as a variable, and the type is the slider. So down here, we're going to have to adjust where we used to have the timer count text. This first line displayed the time as it counted down. We want the slider to take care of that, so we're going to have to adjust the slider value. And we're going to still adjust that with the current time. But instead, we're going to say timer slider dot value, because we're adjusting the value of that slider, is going to be assigned to that current time. So as the current time goes from the starting value of 30 down, the value of that slider is also going to change. If you remember in Unity, as we adjusted it, the knob decreased counterclockwise. So as that value changes, that knob is going to decrease. So this sets the value in the slider to be the same as the current time. So whatever this current time value is, that's the value that the slider takes on. We still want the color to go from green to red, so we're going to leave color lerp, but instead of the timer count text color, we need that fill to change. But before we can do that, we need to make that a variable that's accessible. So we're going to scroll up, and we're going to create a new public variable that's an image. And let's go ahead and name this fill color. So go down and we're going to say fill color dot color is that color lerp transition starting from green and going to red. Go ahead and save this, and let's go back into Unity. Going to our game object where our game manager is stored, we have our timer slider. So we're going to drag our new slider. Let's go ahead and rename that first to timer slider. So we're going to drag this timer slider and drop it in for timer slider. And then we're going to take the fill color, which is this fill, within the timer slider and drop it in for fill color. So now this color will be adjusted and the timer will also be adjusted, both based on the current time. Let's go ahead and run this. And you can see our timer starts out green, sped up, then it goes to red. But nothing happens once it reaches 0. So in the next video, when that timer ends, we're going to give the player the option to restart. So remember, if you found this video helpful, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. And don't forget to save your scene.